Hi and welcome back to my channel. Today I thought we're gonna do something different. We're gonna check out a channel I've never checked out before, and the video is 25 most important events in history. I mean, there's a lot of important events in history, and I thought it would be a great way to see if they are gonna do a proper list or they're just gonna cop out, right? Original videos down below, and let's go.
Mapping the most important events in history is a daunting task. With all that has happened over the course of 5,000 years of human history, how, you might be asking, can we dwindle it down to 25 things? Obviously, there were plenty of other events that occurred which had wide-ranging consequences.
Sure.
Out of all the kings, rulers, leaders, assassins, wars, and innovations changing the progress of mankind...
I mean, one important distinction here, though, is an important event... How am I gonna say this? An important event can be an important event in the eyes of people decades later after the event, right? Because when the event is happening, how would you know it's important? Even though you can say, oh, it was so important here locally, but then in the world, you can't see the world. So how do you know it's so important, right? That's a distinction, though, but okay.
What were some of the most consequential that reverberated throughout the world? That's what we're here to discover. So, ready to hop into a time machine and travel back in time? I'm Mike with List 25, and here are 25 most important events in history.
Sputnik?
25. Greco-Persian Wars. It might not seem like it, but the Greco-Persian Wars were a huge turning point in human history. If the Greeks had fallen and lost against the Persian Empire, like everyone else in the known world, the Western world would likely not have the democratic politics, art, literature, and science it does today. The Greeks not only won against the Persians, but they thrived thereafter all the way up to Alexander the Great. 24.
I'm gonna intervene at the end of all these important events. The Greco-Persian Wars, pretty significant, right? Should it be 25? I don't know. Yes, 25. I don't know that much about that period, but I know the Greco-Persian Wars, right? It is important, and it also shows that the Greeks are powerful in their own right when they can come together to form alliances against Persia, right? And he said all the way up to Alexander the Great, oh, he flourished so well. I mean, they all fought each other and they all sort of despised each other on different things, right? But okay, they weren't that unified like they are today. I don't know, they're very unified, but they weren't a country, right? They were different states, right? Like Sparta, like Athens, right? Thebes.
Alexander the Great.
Yeah.
Speaking of Alexander the Great, when the Greek city-states were growing in their power, he rose up as a Macedonian ruler that would use his charm, cunning, and ruthlessness to conquer Persia, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and some parts of India. Not only did he build a massive empire, but his influence on culture ushered in the Hellenistic period, a heavy mixture of Greek and Asian culture that would dominate the world for centuries. 23.
That is a very important event, right? You can say, although yes, he like a lot of rulers, they came after a great ruler who was just pretty neutral and just built up like the military and economy, right? Like his father, the Philip II, he was also great, but he wasn't as great to expand the territory of Macedonia that great like Alexander did, but he built a very formidable ground for Alexander to stand on to be able to conquer the east, right? All the way up to India, right? And then south to Egypt, right? Okay.
Pax Romana.
Okay.
Pax Romana, which means Roman peace, was a period of peace and stability over the Roman Empire. It started at the reign of Caesar Augustus, when Rome had ruled Europe, North Africa, and Palestine, and lasted for 200 years afterward. This stability allowed for further advances in art, culture, and technology, and established much of what would become modern-day Germany, France, and England. 22.
One point on what he said that, I agree with, but also disagree with a little bit, is that the advancement of technology. Yes, in a broader sense, during peace, technology has advanced, right? But during wartime, things that you need in wartime will later, after the war, be translated into the society when it's peacetime, right? Like airplanes, right? Like using electronics, right? Radios, right? Like, I understand in the Roman peace, it wasn't a peace outside Rome, it was more of a peace inside Rome. There were still border clashes and all that, but okay. Important event? I'd say so, because it's a marking in history. It's a mark in history to point to it was sort of more peaceful than rest of history before that for an empire that big, right? Okay.
The life of Jesus.
Yeah.
The life of Jesus was a major historical event which came about during the reign of Caesar Augustus in Pax Romana. Regardless if you believe Jesus' teachings, few deny how big an impact he left on human history and the massive religion that would soon follow. Christianity has impacted many elements throughout Western culture, shaping it for thousands of years to the modern day. With millions around the world worshiping Jesus as God, his influence has lasted far longer than most.
That is true. I would say it's not even 22. It's up there in like top 10. And when people talk about important events, a lot of these videos of top 10, top 25, top 50, top 100 events in human history, more or less it would be military actions, military victories, losses, defeats, Punic victories, right? Which is pretty important and major. And it's more, if you take human history for, he said, 5,000 years, I would argue more of the history, 50% or more, is some kind of conflict, one or another, right? War, a local dispute that ends in bloodshed, right? Like, that is human history. And I like this list because it's not only pointing to war, but more of things that happened maybe when it was war or when there was no war in a specific country or region. But Jesus Christ, yes, very important event.
1. The life of Muhammad. Born in 570 CE, Muhammad was born in Mecca, and at the age of 40 he claimed to receive a vision from the angel Gabriel. He continued to receive these revelations, which became the Quran. His teachings and message drew crowds, but also swift opposition. He took his followers out of Mecca to Medina, but eventually would gather so many followers he'd return to conquer Mecca. As we know today, his impact on Middle Eastern culture and the world grew with the religion of Islam, becoming the second most popular religion in the world. 20.
That's an important event as well, right? Yeah. Like Jesus Christ, like Mary and Joseph, Muhammad, Dalai Lama, or right, Buddha, all these religious figures, right? Okay.
Genghis Khan's Mongol Empire.
Oh, yes.
Let's hop over to Asia now and look at Genghis Khan, the ruler of one of the largest empires in human history. Few would actually point to Khan as someone who radically changed history, but his Mongol Empire had sweeping effects in their time and beyond. Yep. First, the Mongolian army was a terror, conquering, slaughtering, and pillaging wherever they went. But they were also good at being pragmatic and including and adopting all cultures to please the masses and maintain control. By almost uniting Eurasia, they were able to spread technologies like paper, gunpowder, the compass, and even trousers.
That is very true. And one very cool thing about Genghis Khan and his empire, not maybe the Mongol Empire, but when Genghis Khan was the emperor or Khan, was that most of the people that he had around him except for family, were there based on merit, right? Which at this time, the 1200s, I mean, at that time, no one cared about merit. It was only family, or if I knew you, you would get in a position. He was very big on merit. Maybe not who's in line in the throne, but who he had around him. Military leaders, scholars, religious figures, right? And he would meet with probably anybody. Again, you can't overshadow that by then the wars, pillaging, murdering, slaughtering entire villages, right? You have the good with the bad here, right? But that's the important event. Probably a little higher up the list, but okay.
19. The Black Death. The Black Death, also known as the bubonic plague, earned its name by spreading across Europe and leaving thousands of dead bodies in its wake. By the end, 75 million people are estimated to have died. Afterward, with a human shortage in Europe, serfs could now have their pick of who to work for, resulting in better conditions for them and their families. People were much more bitter towards the Catholic Church, and anti-Semitism grew, with many claiming the Jews started it in the first place.
Yeah, that's pretty sad. But I mean, I've watched a couple of videos when people are talking about the Black Death, the bubonic plague, because there was a lot of plagues, but this one is in particular, right? They say 1/3 of Europe died, and then they compare it to explain to someone who doesn't understand how that would look, and they say, oh, imagine if 1/3 of all blacksmiths in your neighborhood would be dead. I don't think that's how the plague kills. It doesn't kill 1/3 of every blacksmith in this town and every blacksmith in that town, 1/3 of the farmers. I mean, it could kill every farmer, every blacksmith, but save everybody, or not save, but everybody else lives, right? But okay, but bubonic plague, Black Death, very important history.
18. The Fall of Constantinople.
Oh, yes.
Built by the Roman Emperor Constantine in 330 CE, Constantinople served as the Byzantine Empire's capital for centuries. Famous for its impervious walls, few thought it could actually be conquered. However, with the rise and spread of Islam, the capital eventually fell to the Ottoman Turks in 1453. With the Ottoman Turks now having a foothold in Europe, the balance of power suddenly changed. Many Greeks converted to Islam or fled west. The conquest symbolized a victory for Islam, as they saw Constantinople as an affront for them.
That's not true, though. They already had a foothold in Europe, and I would actually argue, even though I might be technically wrong on this, but I would argue, when the Ottoman Empire came and conquered and fought with the Byzantines and took Constantinople, ever since that, I think they were on a decline, right? In power. They had their clashes with Austria, right? Many times, with Russia, right? With the Christians and also some Muslims in Europe as well, right? But I think I might be wrong, and please comment down below if I'm wrong, but I would argue in some sense that after they conquered Constantinople, they were on a decline. Maybe after Constantinople, they were on a peak, but then what? Right? So I think that was a crux. Right? It's a very important event. But I think it also was a little sinkhole in the Ottoman Empire to its fall after World War I.
17. The Renaissance. During the time of the Middle Ages and the Black Death, education and knowledge were relatively stagnant. But starting in the 15th century, there was a rebirth of knowledge, art, and culture that started in Italy and spread across Europe. This Renaissance, or rebirth, brought with it new technologies and advancements, which created more prosperity and wealth.
I mean, yeah, I have nothing more to say about it. Yeah, important event, and I mean, it's still a Renaissance, right? But okay.
The Gutenberg printing press.
Oh, yes.
One of the greatest inventions of the Renaissance was the Gutenberg printing press. Gutenberg took the idea of printing from Asia, but made it much easier and more efficient with his press. The first books he printed were Bibles, and they were all sold before he even finished them. The printing press fanned the flames of reading, education, and knowledge with the new capability of mass printing books that would have previously been copied by hand.
That's true, and that was a rebuttal to our own thing. Okay, yeah, that was one of the most important technologies being invented. Maybe not for survival, all that, but it's past survival. But okay, yes.
15. Protestant Reformation.
Okay.
Something else that came out of the Renaissance, with the help of the printing press, was the Protestant Reformation. Starting with Martin Luther's 95 Theses, which argued against the Pope's use of indulgences, the Reformation grew with others like John Calvin and Henry VIII questioning the Pope and the Catholic Church's authority. These grievances caused the Church to split into various denominations, such as the Lutheran Church and the Anglican Church. Both positives and negatives grew from this split, including bloody persecutions on the one hand and strength in universities, art, and education on the other.
I mean, yeah, that's true. Yeah, okay. That's an important event because it reflects the world today. But okay, yeah.
14. European colonialism.
Yeah.
Roughly from the 1500s to
Wait,
19...
just what is this map though? This map is when Spain has Mexico and there. The Brits have the colonies. Okay. Portugal has Brazil, Angola. Okay, Mozambique. Okay. Is that Mozambique? No. Okay. Okay.
In the 60s, Europe expanded all across the globe. From the New World to Africa, India, and Asia, Europe created colonies on almost every continent on Earth.
Yep.
With colonialism came greater trade, which meant greater wealth for the Europeans and mostly slavery and impoverishment for everyone else. As time went on, many of the colonies sought independence, and after World War II, a devastated Europe began to lose control.
I disagree a little bit with him saying that European colonialism came slavery. Like how he said it, right? In the world, before any colonialism, even by the Greeks in the Mediterranean, there was already slavery everywhere in the world where humans were, right? So, did it even increase? I don't know. But okay, but colonialism, very important. Doesn't matter if it's European colonialism, any colonialism, because it expands trade, like he said, right? Knowledge, technologies. Okay.
13. American Revolution.
Yeah.
The American Revolution of the 13 British colonies was a major shift in the status quo. Originally fought over taxation without representation, the revolution expanded into Enlightenment ideals and giving rights to all people. With the colonies beating back the English and winning the war, the Americans not only won a war for themselves, but for the entire world, inspiring many other countries to fight against the ruling classes.
That is true. That is very true. Yeah, that's an important event. Okay. 13th place though? Yeah, maybe, yeah. Okay.
12. French Revolution.
Yeah.
Inspired out of the American Revolution, the French Revolution changed France and Europe forever. What began as a protest against the French monarchy and the elite turned into a discourse of republicanism, human rights, and citizenship. Unfortunately, it became bloody and violent, and rather than leading to the latter ideals, became entrenched in nationalism and dictatorship. While the revolution was messy, out of it came Enlightenment-based philosophy, which also reverberated around the world.
One thing though, why he said nationalism and dictatorship came out of this. Nationalism came out of every revolution, like the American Revolution. Patriotism is nationalism, but they changed probably the word or whatever to be more not aligned with the British, right? But like, it's the same thing. Dictatorship, yes, Napoleon was a dictator, right? And you could argue all those politicians who was in government, they were sort of dictators. The monarchy was a dictator, came back, and then Napoleon came back again. right? But nationalism already existed, not like a nation, but pride in where you came from. Okay. Disagree with him on that.
11. The American Civil War. Many believe the American Civil War was a mere family matter which only impacted the United States. But in reality, it had wide-ranging effects across the globe. For many in Europe, the American Civil War was evidence of republicanism crumbling. America was a shining example of the experiment, and if it couldn't withstand and stay united, what hope was left? Thankfully, the North succeeded and reunited with the South, surprising many, but also proving Republican institutions can remain intact after a hard and bloody war. Also, with America making slavery illegal, the slave trade virtually collapsed, with other countries in the Americas like Cuba and Brazil also abolishing it. It's quite possible that if the North had not won, legalized slavery would have continued on into the modern day.
I think it still is. And when you say legalized slavery, sure, in Africa and in China, it probably still is slavery. And they're doing it, and no one is stopping them. And when you say legalized, that means a government authority is saying you can't do this. And no government authority is saying you can't do this, meaning it's legalized slavery. So it's still going on today. So I don't know where he got that from, but okay. Fair enough. Yeah, that's an important event. Not only impacted the US. Okay.
10. Industrial Revolution. From the 18th and 19th centuries, something amazing came out of Britain. Before, manufacturing mostly came out of people's homes or at shops. But suddenly, all that shifted to major factories with machines helping mass produce all kinds of textiles. It's called the Industrial Revolution, and it changed Britain, Europe, and America from mostly agrarian societies to urban and industrial. Out of it came major innovations like trains and automobiles. Even though it provided serious challenges for the poorer classes, it improved the lives of the middle class.
No. I think it improved the poor class as well. But it also made probably people who maybe were in the lower middle class, who didn't do anything, maybe they become poor because they were probably beggars or something. I don't know. Whatever. But that Industrial Revolution, very important event. For good or worse, doesn't matter. Important event.
9. The Medical Revolution. Before the early parts of the 19th century, medicine was pretty much still in the Dark Ages. Some strides had been made, but it wasn't until the Medical Revolution that things began to change. It came out of the Industrial Revolution and the discovery that disease was caused by microorganisms. With the ability to mass-produce new medicines in pill form and create anesthetics, healthcare took on a new form and would lead to some of the greatest discoveries in human history, like vaccinations and antibiotics. 8.
Yes, but is it on a top 25 most important events in history? And it's on number 9. Yes, it's important, yes. But again, or not again, but people lived and people died up to that point. Okay, a population boom might have not happened if this didn't happen, but we've still been there as humans, or we would just been wiped out, and that's fine. Like, how many species are alive now that were alive thousands of years ago? Not that many. But okay.
Assassination of Archduke Ferdinand II.
Yep.
The Industrial Revolution changed a lot of things, but one major ramification was the growing sense of identity and nationalism. By 1914, with new technological innovations like tanks, machine guns, and deadly gases, Europe had become a powder keg of factions just waiting to go to war. So, on June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, toured Sarajevo to inspect the armed forces in Bosnia, something Serbian nationalists weren't happy about. Ferdinand and his wife were shot by Gavrilo Princip, a Serbian nationalist. The Serbian government was blamed for the attack, which sparked World War I.
One thing that he said though, all those inventions, right? He said the tank was invented before 1914. Are you sure? That doesn't sound correct, but okay. Maybe a form of that was maybe written down on a piece of paper. Maybe it wasn't practical. You didn't have it in front of you. So that's wrong. He said something else, but yes, it sparked it, and yes, he said it correctly. There was a lot of tension in Europe, and it would have blown over into a world war or a European war if something else happened, right? Just something, right? Important.
7. October Revolution.
Yeah.
While many of Europe's revolutions saw changes toward republicanism, Russia's October Revolution, aka the Bolshevik Revolution, saw their politics moving in a totally different direction, towards communism. Led by Vladimir Lenin and the Bolsheviks against the Tsar and his ruling class, the October Revolution was complete in 1917. Tsar Nicholas II was overthrown and executed, ushering in the Soviet era.
That's a very important event. Again, though, is it the 25 most important events? The October Revolution. He didn't say like the overall Russian Revolution. He said specifically the October Revolution, because there was a February one, but okay. But yes, a lot of countries were heading towards republicanism, some sort of nationalism in that. Well, in the Russian Civil War, it was about the old ways monarchy, some form of community. They called themselves anarchy, but they weren't, group. They weren't anarchists, whatever. And then there were the Mensheviks, who was sort of socialist, right? And then Bolsheviks. And it's funny, Mensheviks means what is it? Mensheviks, I think, means the minority, and Bolsheviks means the majority. But the amount of people that they both have, the Mensheviks had the majority of people, and the Bolsheviks had the minority of people. So it's a little weird there, but okay.
Great Depression. With World War I over, the 1920s brought about rapid economic growth in the United States, but it all came to a screeching halt with the crash in 1929. Millions of investors' dollars were lost, banks had collapsed, and 15 million Americans were unemployed. This created a ripple effect across the globe, with almost every country seeing large-scale unemployment and deflation. It lasted a decade and resulted in major changes in the financial institutions, economic policy, and theory. While the United States and other countries began to see signs of a recovery by 1939, World War II gave it a final push. 5.
Yes, it's a very important event. The Great Depression. Although there were a lot of depressions in the US, maybe not a lot, or in the world. But yes, it was an important one. Right? And it's funny how there wasn't a sort of socialist or communist revolution in the US back then, right? Although, because, what do you say, 14, 15 million unemployed people? I mean, yeah. Okay, what's this?
World War II. While many thought World War I was over, deep roots of resentment and anger still existed in certain parts of Europe. With the rise of Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany, the war started with the invasion of Poland in 1939 and continued as they began to advance on France and Belgium. The war included all parts of the world, such as the Soviet Union, China, and Japan. By the end of the war, millions of lives had been lost. Europe was a devastated wasteland, and new superpowers such as the Soviet Union and the United States rose up to create a new order and new conflicts.
That is true, because the US wasn't a major power player during World War One. They were a power player when they came in, right? Because they had fresh troops, fresh supplies and all that, right? So they were a power play, but not on the world stage. And why is World War One not an important event? World War Two is the shot that caused World War One is more important than World War One. I don't know. World War II would never happen if World War One happened. Never happened, right? World War One created tanks, and it created the tactics that they used in World War II, right? Combined arms, right? You didn't only have tanks, you didn't only have infantry, you didn't only have airplanes, right? You had combined tactics, combined arms. But okay, yeah, top 3? Really? Important events in history, and it's 3.
4. Cold War. With the
Really?
end of World War II came a new type of war, the Cold War. The Soviet Union advanced on Eastern Europe, trying to spread communism, while the West held on to democracy, creating the Iron Curtain. With the threat of nuclear weapons wiping out millions in a matter of seconds, the Cold War was born and would continue for decades, using a war of undercover intelligence, words, and diplomacy. The Cold War ended in 1991 with the fall of communism in Eastern Europe and Russia. 3.
I disagree with him a little bit there. What do you mean? Can't we all die in a split second of nuclear wars now? What changed? I think we have more than they have back then, even though they did SALT agreements or whatever. Right? So I don't know, but is Cold War ahead of World War II and World War One? Really? Maybe. Maybe. I mean, I understand that they're going through the list towards important events after each other. So they had World War One, and then they had World War Two, or they had Gavrilo Princip shooting in Sarajevo, and then World War Two and Cold War, and now they're going to probably space race or something, right? But okay. Okay.
Sputnik.
Yeah.
During the Cold War, new tensions rose with the Soviet Union launching Sputnik, the first satellite into space.
Was it?
It shocked the United States and sparked a space race between the two countries. The technological achievements created out of the space race included advanced weaponry, the ability for man to land on the moon, artificial limbs, water purifiers, and satellite TV. 2.
Was the Sputnik a satellite? Well, you don't know. Okay. But the Sputnik, really? Is it that important? Because importance is something that you need, or something that happened that was needed. I understand that we needed Sputnik, in a way, to have the life we have today, but... Okay, it's not convincing me on this list, but okay. JFK, yeah, okay.
JFK assassination.
Number 2? Really?
President John F. Kennedy championed many efforts during his time as President of the United States, including softening tensions during the Cold War, advancing the space program, and fighting for civil rights. But with his assassination, much of his efforts were suddenly thrown into limbo. Luckily, his successor, President Lyndon Johnson, helped push forward his vision.
Did he?
And Johnson used JFK's legacy as a way to push
Did
Congress
he?
to pass the Civil Rights Act, as well as fund NASA. Consequently, however, the biggest impact of the JFK assassination could arguably be the continuation of the Vietnam War. With his reluctance to put boots on the ground, many historians don't believe JFK would have heated up the war like LBJ. Without a Vietnam War, the world would have looked much different.
Okay, I understand this list is not top 25 most important events. It's just have 25 events from where? From like the Roman period, or from the Greek period, and then up to now. I don't think LBJ continued JFK's vision. I don't think, maybe at 1%, not 50%, not 100%, right? He would never put boots on the ground in Vietnam. But okay. I don't know that for 100% sure, but from all the actions and all the speeches and all the things that he wrote down, JFK, I don't think he would have done that. He barely wanted to do it in Cuba, so, you know. Okay, what is 1?
1.
Computer?
Digital revolution.
Okay.
With the advancement of computers and the internet, the digital revolution has and continues to change the economic and information landscape. In many parts of the world, new businesses and jobs have grown out of the creation of the internet. but it's also provided challenges. With hackers stealing millions of dollars and identities, the mass spying from the NSA, and the use of false information to disrupt democracies, we certainly live in a brave new world.
I mean, that is true, right? But I mean, hackers are just beggars, and sort of, if you compare it to back then, back in like Middle Ages, like people who tricked the people on the street with like these tricks, you know? With the ball in 3 cups and you're gonna guess which one it is, like those tricks. That's hackers, right? Bank robbers in like the 1900s, right? Bank robbers still going on, but okay. But this list, it was pretty decent. He didn't mention World War One. He mentioned the shooting before World War One. Disappointing there, but okay. Otherwise, pretty decent. Okay. Alright, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.